Hello and welcome to this Aim High Live. If this is your first time joining, then Aim High is the live, interactive, free online school. We're running lessons on all kinds of things from science, history, geography, English, politics, all kinds of stuff. And it's all free. And we have been running this thing where we're trying to get amazing people to come on to be our guests. And today I am really excited to introduce you all to Cal Major. She is a surfer, a kite surfer, a wild swimmer, a scuba diver, a downhill mountain biker, a veterinary surgeon, and a tireless advocate for our oceans. She actually first spoke publicly at the Eden Project, who are Aim High's supporters. She is the founder of Paddle Against Plastic, an ambassador for Surfers Against Sewage, among many others. She's set 2 world records, been all over the BBC, named on the Independent's Happy List for creating positive change, and she's even been awarded an honorary master's degree and the Prime Minister's Points of Light Award. She has some amazing stories to tell, and I'm going to hand over to her. Hi, Cal. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. What a lovely introduction. Well, it's a real pleasure to be here. And I'm really stoked to share my story with you and hopefully inspire you to be ocean advocates as well. So the one term that you missed out there, Matthew, was that I'm an ocean advocate, and that's a title I've given myself. And all that means is that I really, really care about the oceans, I feel a real connection to them, and I do everything in my power to protect them and look after them. And we can all be ocean advocates, and I'm going to tell you today a little bit about how you can be an ocean advocate too. So where did it all start? Matthew, I think we've got a photograph, the first photograph. It all began for me when I learnt to scuba dive in Australia. And I don't know if any of you have ever been scuba diving before. If you've been scuba diving, give me a little shout out, and we'll see if anyone's been scuba diving. But basically, I learned to scuba dive in Australia. Next slide there, Matthew. That would be great.
Yep.
Learnt to scuba dive in Australia when I was 18, and I'd never really experienced the ocean like this before, and suddenly I was thrown into this amazing environment with multicoloured corals and fish that were bigger than I was, and turtles swimming around just minding their own business. And I was instantly in love with this place. I felt so much peace there and so much happiness, and from that moment onwards I decided that I wanted to do everything I possibly could to protect this place that I loved.
Can I ask you something?
Then, say again, Matthew?
Can I ask you something, Cal?
Crack
Do you
on.
prefer scuba diving at night or during the day?
I've been scuba diving at night. Now that is quite an experience because there's a lot of fluorescence at night and bioluminescence in the water. That's a really cool time to scuba dive. Have you been diving at night?
I've been diving at night once. I remember there were loads of like wiggly worms, like kind of moving through the water, which was so good.
And they'll come to your torch and like everywhere, just wiggly worms all over your face and your hands, and yeah, it's a really cool experience. The underwater world is like nothing you could ever experience on land. It's just so special, and I think because we don't get to spend much time there, breathing there, whenever we do see it, it's such a crazy place to be.
Ninex saying that sounds scary. What sounds scary, Ninex? You mean being underwater with the worms?
Say again.
Sorry, I'm just looking at that. Can you see that Ninex has said that sounds scary? I think they're talking about us being underwater at night.
I've not got the chat screen on. Let me find the chat screen. Yes, okay. So the worms, I mean, the worms aren't going to hurt you. They're just there having a little. They love the light of your torch. So if you're shining a torch in the middle of a dark ocean, the worms will all kind of flock to the light of the torch. And they're not scary. They can be a bit funny when they're kind of creeping around your face and stuff. But it's not scary. You know, being underwater. I think at first there's always that little bit of fear and anxiety because it's a completely alien world for us, isn't it? You know, but actually when I learned to appreciate that fear and just calm down and enjoy it, my goodness, it was so peaceful. All that fear just disappeared and it was just so peaceful. And I spent a lot of time on top of the water as well. So can we have the next picture, Matthew?
Oh, yes.
So I spend a lot of time not just scuba diving underwater, but also surfing, and as Matthew said, kite surfing. And I've been really fortunate to travel around a lot of the world actually surfing and spending time in these amazing places all around the world, whether it's with in the underwater world, scuba diving or surfing or stand-up paddleboarding.
Cal,
Have we got any
have you?
surfers here?
Can you see the chat now?
I can see the chat. Yes.
Great,
How long
great,
have you
great.
been surfing? I've been surfing since I was about 15, but properly started surfing when I was 18. We've got someone saying that they love the ocean. Oh, wonderful. Have you ever surfed a tunnel? Once or twice, but they always ended in me coming out worse off than the wave.
A tunnel is when it goes over the top of you like this, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so a barrel basically the wave. So if you've got a really nice wave that peaks up, and you've got a wind that's holding the face of the wave up, sometimes they can curl around into a tubular shape, and you're meant to kind of surf down the middle of the barrel there. And it's really tricky. It's easier said than done. It's quite difficult to do in practice. I've had a couple, but in my entire lifetime of surfing, not very often. That's the perfect diagram there. Excellent. So what is an ocean advocate we've had? So an ocean advocate, I consider myself to be an ocean advocate because I care very deeply about the oceans, and I'll do whatever I can that's in my power to protect the oceans. And as I was saying at the very beginning of this, but you might not have heard because you might have only just joined our chat, but I think everybody can be an ocean advocate, and I'm going to help you understand how you can be an ocean advocate. So that's something we're going to talk about in a little bit. So hang fire to what is an ocean advocate just at the moment. We've also got, what did you start out as a profession? So I'm a veterinary surgeon. Does everyone know what a veterinary surgeon is? Basically an animal doctor. So I'm trained as an animal doctor, and I've spent a lot of years treating animals. But my big passion now is for the animals in the ocean. So that's where I focus most of my attention now. And I think that as ocean advocates, we all have the ability to look after the animals in the ocean as well. All right, so can we have the next picture up, Matthew?
For sure. Here we go. Before we go to the next picture, could I just really quickly, because I think there are quite a lot of people who've joined late. Well, anyway, I'll bring the next picture up, which is, oh, wait, that's not the next picture. The next picture is this one, sorry. So this is the next picture, which is a plasticky beach. But for those who are joining late, I just want to really quickly, because I can see that a lot of people have come on late, just reintroduce Cal, who we're speaking to today. Yeah, for those who are joining late, thanks so much for coming. This is Aim High Live, which is the online school, and we have today Cal Major, who is a surfer, a kite surfer, a wild swimmer, scuba diver, downhill mountain biker, and a veterinary surgeon, and a tireless advocate for our oceans. And she is the founder of Paddle Against Plastic, an ambassador for Surfers Against Sewage, among many others. She's set 2 world records, which I hope she will talk about later. She's been all over the BBC. She's even been awarded the Prime Minister's Points of Light Award. And she's got an honorary master's degree, which is so cool. Anyway, I'm going to keep allowing her to tell the story, and I'm sorry to jump in there, but I saw that a lot of people joined late, so just to catch you up on who we've got on today. And now we will go back to Cal's slides. Here we go.
Yeah, great. Welcome, everybody. Even if you did join late, all very welcome here. All right, so the next picture that we've got up here is a beach. This is the kind of thing that I was seeing all over the place. Anywhere I surfed, whenever I went on holiday, I was seeing this kind of thing. Can everybody see that? Can everybody see what's going on that beach? What is it that we're seeing here on this beach? It's a really common sight on beaches all around the world, and I was finding myself getting increasingly upset about this. This is the place where I go to surf, to have fun, to connect with nature, to be around animals that I love. And every time I came in from a surf or a paddleboarding trip, I'd find this on the beach. And yes, we've got a few people saying plastic pollution, litter, exactly. So what we've got on this beach is a really common sight that we see on beaches all around the world, which is plastic pollution. And we're going to go a bit more into that in a little minute. Can we have the next picture up, Matthew? So one of the things I was seeing in particular on beaches that I was spending time at was plastic bottles. So this next picture you're going to see is this next picture you're going to see is from a beach in Cornwall. This is a little tiny cove that you can only get to really from the sea. So I paddleboarded in here, and in this one cove, I found 80 plastic bottles just sitting in the back of the cove that had washed in from the beach. Now, I started learning a lot about plastic bottles and the impact of them and where they come from. Can anybody guess? And I know we've got people from all over the world, but can anybody guess how many plastic bottles we use just in the UK every day? So how many plastic bottles do we use just in the UK every day? 80? A few more than 80. So this is one of the facts that shocked me the most. So we've got 1.74 million. Someone's guessed 800,000. These are all good guesses, actually. I'm going to let a couple more people have a guess. Any more guesses on how many plastic bottles we use every day in the UK?
Per day, yeah.
2 million. 1 million? Well, if we used 1 million a day, then, okay, Anna, you are the closest. You get the prize for the closest. Anna said 30 million. The answer is 38.5 million. In the UK, we use 38.5 million plastic bottles every single day.
Wow.
It is terrible. Yeah, we've had someone saying that's terrible. It is terrible. And every single day, and only half of them are recycled. And the ones that aren't recycled, some of them end up in landfill, but a lot of them actually end up in the oceans and we'll talk about how they get there in a while as well, so try not to worry about that at the moment. But a lot of them end up in the ocean. And for me, we're using a lot of water bottles as well in the UK, plastic water bottles, and yet here in our country, we are blessed with free, safe, clean drinking water from our taps. And I just thought this was absolute madness. I thought it was crazy that we're going through so many water bottles when we can use a refillable water bottle instead. So I decided I had to do something about it. We'll have the next photo if that's all right, please, Matthew.
Yep, sure.
It is definitely wasteful. Okay, so someone said, where are the plastic bottles mainly coming from? Now we're gonna come on to that later. So if you can just have a little think about where you think they might be coming from, and we're gonna have a little look into that a little bit later.
Cal, did you know
has
that?
Anybody ever been stand-up paddleboarding?
Oh, sorry.
Anybody ever been stand-up paddleboarding?
Cal, while you're waiting for people to respond, I was going to ask you a question. Did you know that it takes more water to make a plastic bottle than the water it actually contains? It's like 2 to 3 times as much water just to make it.
It's crazy, isn't it? And when that is then being used to contain water, that just seems so ludicrous, doesn't it? Yep. The whole, this whole kind of situation we've got ourselves into, the way that we believe that it's necessary to have plastic water bottles, when you really start to think about it, it's very, very strange. Okay, so stand-up paddleboarding. A couple of people said yes, it's pretty fun. Stand-up paddleboarding is basically you have a big glorified surfboard. Mine's about 12 foot long, which is probably about 3 of you sort of standing on top of each other if you stood it up next to you, 2.5 of you. So it's a great big long paddleboard, and I decided that I had to do something about all this plastic. I've seen that so many of you are angered by these stats. Yes, we have to be, upset about these, but I decided I had to do something about it, and rather than just get upset about it, I wanted to bring a positive message of what we can actually do about it. So rather than just focusing on the problem and the doom and gloom, I thought, let's actually do something about it. So I decided that I was going to set up a campaign called Paddle Against Plastic. And basically, during that campaign, I've stand-up paddleboarded lots of different places around the UK, learning about plastic pollution and talking to people about the positive things that we can do. So asking people to use a refillable water bottle, And can I have the next picture up when you get a sec, Matthew?
Sure. Florence says that they love stand-up paddleboarding, and DRK Marsh says, is it true it's harder for men because of a higher centre of gravity?
Ooh, I suppose it very much depends on the individual man. I will ask some of my stand-up paddleboarding friends about that. I suppose the lower your centre of gravity, the easier it is because you're not as likely to fall off. But it also depends on your board. So if you're a slightly bigger man, then or a bigger woman, then you can get a bigger board, and that'll make it a bit more stable. This is another little image of stand-up paddleboarding, and this is what I expected my stand-up paddleboarding expeditions to be like. So my first ever stand-up paddleboarding expedition was around the Cornish coast in the UK, and that was 300 miles, and I paddled basically looking for plastic water bottles and asking people to commit to using a refillable water bottle instead of plastic ones. And this is what I imagined it was going to look like. And if you could show us the next picture, Matthew, we'll get an idea of actually what it was like, what the reality was. Very, very far removed from these beautiful, sunny pictures. I thought I was going to be paddling with dolphins and getting a suntan and a six-pack, and this was the reality. It was head-high waves and gale force winds and fog and no friendly dolphins, but lots of angry seals. And this was my first ever expedition, basically talking to people about plastic water bottles in our ocean. Got a couple of people saying, got someone saying hi from Cornwall. Yes, this is Cornwall. So this is the reality of Cornwall in the summer. Not what I wanted it to be like, but what it was actually like in reality. But I still found a lot of plastic. So my first expedition was around Cornwall. My second expedition that I did was around a little island on the west coast of Scotland called the Isle of Skye. Has anyone been to the Isle of Skye? So the Isle of Skye basically sits just off the west coast of Scotland, and it's really it's remote. There are a few people that live there, but a lot of the island is really inaccessible. So it's quite a remote island, and I wanted to show that even these places that are really, really remote and full of wildlife, Scotland's so renowned for its beautiful wildlife, I wanted to demonstrate that they are no less vulnerable to plastic pollution. So I think we've got a little video, have we, to play now, Matthew?
We have. Right, here we go. Video coming in. We're going to just slide it in over the top.
Sounds good.
Oh, if we can make it work. Farewell this thing. Okay, so I'm going to play it. You and I won't be able to hear the sound, but everyone else will.
Right.
Here we go.
This is supposedly Skye's best beach. Welcome to paradise. Going to do a little mini beach clean along this section, which is really full of stuff, and see what I find. There was so much plastic. There was a lot of fishing rope, but also a lot of single-use plastic items, and that's the stuff that we use in everyday life. A lot of it's packaging, food packaging, that we use for a matter of seconds for the sake of convenience, and then it persists for hundreds of years. A plastic bottle in the environment will last for 450 years. In the UK, we use 38.5 million plastic bottles every day, every single day, and less than half of them are recycled. And those that aren't recycled can end up in places like this, where they damage the environment, they destroy the oceans. They release harmful chemicals and carcinogens, and they fragment bit by bit into smaller pieces that can then be ingested by marine life. The oceans produce half the oxygen we breathe on Earth. They're so precious, and we really cannot afford to be damaging them at the rate we are for something as simple and avoidable as a plastic bottle.
Right, so my question to you is, why should we care about this? Okay, there's plastic everywhere. We're always seeing these images of turtles with straws up their nose. Every beach that we go to is covered in plastic. But why should we care about it? What's it got to do with us, really? So the question I want to ask you is, do you feel, sat at home where you are right now, in your normal life pre-lockdown, do you feel like you have a connection to the ocean? Do you feel connected to the ocean? And that could be either your physical connection or an emotional connection. So have we got a poll, Matthew, that we can do?
I am dropping the poll in. Oh, no, wait. Oh, now I'm dropping it in. There you go, everyone. I just sent a link to the poll. So if everyone goes into that poll, we'll be able to see the results coming up live. I'm going to disappear and be replaced by the poll. Oh, there's yeses pouring in and quite a few maybes. Not had any no's yet.
Ah, well, this is interesting.
Yes is climbing. Maybes dropping down.
Poll is a big improvement on Matthew.
Liz, that's very rude.
Someone said, yes, I own a beach. Lucky you.
What? Really?
Is
it a portable beach?
From the ocean, but it's my favourite place to visit. This is fantastic. We've got no no's. I think the maybes are the ones here that we're kind of that we're speaking to. Oh, someone said bring back Matthew. He's much funnier than the poll. Oh, there you go, Matthew. You are wanted.
Thanks. Thanks, get out of the freezer. Anyway, I think those poll results.
Okay, so overwhelmingly we have a yes, and about a quarter of the people are saying maybe. Now, I often ask people this when I go to colleges and I go to schools, and I often ask people this, and it's really interesting. The schools that I go to by the sea, they'll always overwhelmingly say, yes, I have a connection to the ocean because they surf there or they spend time on the beach. When I go into the middle of the country, so I do quite a bit of work with schools up in the Midlands in the UK, oftentimes there it's much more diverse. So normally you'll have a real 50-50 split between people who think, yes, I'm connected to the ocean, and those that don't. And so what I want to talk to you about is how actually we're all connected to the oceans. So someone's mentioned it just before, but I want to ask you, in fact, do you know what? Stand up. Everybody stand up. Stand up, Matthew.
Me? All right. I haven't stood up in years. Wait.
Everybody stand up.
Okay.
Okay, I'm hoping you can still see me because I've no idea where my camera's pointing now. All right, and I want you all to take a great big breath, okay? You ready? Okay, now I want you to take one more breath. Are you ready? This time the biggest breath you've taken all day. In fact, make it the biggest breath you've taken all week. Ready? The opening the arms is optional. Okay, right. Now you can sit down again, but hopefully now that you stood up, you're not going to fall asleep. All right, so what I want to know from you is, where did that second breath you took, where does the oxygen in the breath that you breathe come from? And if you have paid attention in the film, you'll know the answer to this. But who can tell me where the oxygen in your breath comes from? Happy Late Ocean Day, by the way. Excellent.
Thanks, Casey.
Don't faint.
I was really close to fainting.
Some fantastic answers. Okay, so a couple of people have said plants and oceans and the seas. One person says plankton. Exactly. So that second breath you took, the one where you opened your arms wide and took the biggest breath you've taken all week, and the one that was full of oxygen and full of life and full of love and made you feel amazing, and stopped you falling asleep, that breath, that oxygen in that breath that was all produced in the ocean. So the oceans produce half the oxygen we breathe, and that's through the plankton, it's from the plants in the ocean, and yes, trees on land produce a lot of our oxygen as well, but the plants in the ocean produce 50% of it. And so healthy oceans are really, really vital for our own health. But not only that, it just shows us that regardless of where we are in the UK, we all are connected to the oceans through our breath and through the oxygen. Through the oxygen that we breathe. There's also, even if you take away the fact they produce all our oxygen, they connect us all globally. I know there's lots of people here who are in places other than the UK. I live right by the beach. My ocean here is exactly the same as your ocean where you live. The rivers here that run through our countries, the rivers and canals, they're all part of the ocean too. So even if we live inland, even if you live, miles and miles and miles from the sea, you're never going to be too far from a canal or a river. So can anybody, does anybody have a river or canal down the road from them?
I've got a tiny little stream. But yeah.
But that leads to the ocean, Matthew. That's your connection to the ocean.
Maybe, or maybe it's just a circular river, just going round and round.
Never going
Trick as
anywhere.
well. But yeah, it used to be the case, didn't it, that the oceans were just so big and humanity was so small that we couldn't affect it, and now now there are so many of us that everything we do really matters.
Definitely, and that's the beauty of the plastic pollution crisis, is that, okay, so the ocean is big, the plastic pollution crisis is massive, but because we're all connected to the oceans, not only can our actions impact the oceans in a negative way, but our actions can impact the oceans in a positive way, regardless of where we live in the UK. Okay, so the oceans are also home to some pretty amazing wildlife. Can we have the next
We're there.
next picture up, please?
Tis in.
Okay. So, can anybody tell me what this is? Anybody tell me what this is? Manta ray. Excellent. Okay, so this here is a manta ray, and its wingspan, so the average wingspan of a manta ray is the same as, I've got it written down here, two of you laid down end to end, so, one person laying down and the next person laying down right next to them, like this. Both of your bodies laid down next to each other will be the same as the wingspan of this amazing creature.
Whoa.
So yes, the oceans produce our oxygen. They connect us globally. They have these amazing creatures, and all of that is really, really important to our health. Our health and the ocean's health are basically one and the same.
On making oxygen, Cal, there's a question that's coming from Green Mango Man saying, how does the oxygen produced in the ocean get into the atmosphere? I thought oxygen remains dissolved in the ocean water.
Where are we?
That's a little further up.
I don't know the answer to that. However, I will find out, and we can maybe put a tweet out, Matthew. How about that?
Okay, sorry. In which case, I'm sorry that I threw that your way. No, I think Green Mango Man. The answer is that yes, a lot of it does remain dissolved in the oceans, but also a lot of it is released from the oceans too. But as far as I know, I think Cal's spot on with it's just the algae in the ocean that produce 50% of all the world's oxygen, and then you also have all the other kind of ocean plants and stuff that are also producing even more oxygen. So yeah, we still get loads and loads of our oxygen from the oceans. It does come out of solution. Also, the hotter the oceans become, the more they will also tend to release gases, which is another strange effect. So that will also make them release a little bit more oxygen. But then you also have the effect that carbon dioxide is building up, which is going to put more carbon dioxide into the ocean, which will make it more acidic. Anyway, sorry, Cal, do carry on.
No, please, it's a really important point. And oftentimes I think at the minute we're talking a lot about climate change, aren't we? And we're talking about all of these issues that are, in a way that suggests that they're separate to each other. We're talking about climate change, we're talking about ocean health, we're talking about plastic pollution. And actually the reality is they are all so linked that if we're going to look at one problem, we have to look at the whole lot. And we can't look at the health of the oceans and our health separately, because again, they're so linked. So it's all really important. And yeah, thank you for clearing that one up, Matthew. Okay, so I want to know, can we have the next picture, please?
It is there.
I want to know what your favourite creature in the ocean is. So for me, it's turtles. Every time it's turtles. And turtles are one of the things that, one of the creatures that we see more and more in media who are being affected by things like plastic pollution. So can we have the next photo, please, Matthew?
Yes. The next photo is not a very happy photo.
So someone said, it's sad to think that by the time I am older, some of the big coral reefs might not exist anymore. Can anybody tell me, does anybody know how fast coral reefs grow? So coral reefs are one of the things that are most quickly affected by changes in the ocean environment. They're really delicate structures, and they're most quickly affected by changes in the ocean environment. Can anybody tell me how fast they grow? It's got some excellent creatures here that people are loving. We've got axolotls, penguins, dolphins, reef snakes. Excellent. So coral reefs grow at a rate of approximately 1 centimetre a year, which is absolutely tiny. So if they're growing at 1 centimetre a year, and we've got these massive structures of coral reef, and we're destroying them, they are going to take a heck of a long time to regrow. So instead of destroying them, we need to protect them, really. So that was just a bit of an aside. Does anybody know whether a coral is a plant or an animal? Can anybody tell me?
Great question. This is one that I did a lesson on a little while ago, so I'm going to see if anyone remembers, but I didn't tell anyone whether it was a plant or an animal.
Ah.
We've got quite a lot of both coming in.
I'm enjoying this both. Right, can anybody tell? So, coral as a structure is an animal. Can anybody tell me how it might be conceived as being both? Anybody know why both is actually a very appropriate answer? Okay. So, the reason you could consider coral to be both is that actually it's not just coral in that structure. So the coral itself is an animal. Does all the other things it needs to do to be an animal, does it photosynthesize? Okay, so coral itself doesn't photosynthesize, but coral is actually inside the coral lives a very specific kind of algae. And this algae is a plant, and the algae photosynthesizes and produces a lot of the sugars and the oxygen that the coral then needs to survive. So what happens with coral is that if anything changes in the coral's environment, so for example, if it's the water temperature changes, so which can happen with global warming, if we have a pH change, which again can happen with acidification of the oceans as a result of global warming, if we have specific threats facing the coral in its environment, such as plastic pollution, those corals can get stressed. And what can happen then is that the algae, which live within the corals, they basically jump ship. When the coral gets stressed, it expels the algae and the coral bleaches, and then it doesn't have its algae part to make the oxygen and the sugars that it needs to survive. And so over time, if the conditions aren't then returned to being sustainable for the algae to live there, the coral can die. So we've got some great comments coming here about coral. You guys are really knowledgeable about coral. We've got symbiotic relationship, mutualistic relationship, fantastic. Yep, you guys, brilliant. You are all over the coral stuff. So I think we'll leave the coral for now. Can anybody tell me what's going on with this turtle here? Because can everybody see the turtle on the screen? Anybody tell me what's going on there? So these are the kind of animals that I've been treating for the last few years. These are the kind of animals that I concentrate on most. This is a turtle that's washed up on a beach in the Maldives, and unfortunately he's been, yes, as someone said, stuck in some fishing stuff. Quite right. He's tangled in a fishing net. And this net is a fishing net that's been lost at sea. It's been used for fishing, it's been lost and discarded at sea. And this turtle's basically come across it in the ocean. And they swim up onto the top of the nets because they love basking. They're reptiles. Turtles are reptiles, and they swim up on top of the net when it's floating in the ocean because they want to bask in the sun. Then they get their flippers caught, and they end up being entangled in these nets, and they can't function when they're in the nets. Turtles need to dive for their food, and they can't dive when they've got nets around them. And often what happens is one of their flippers will get caught in the net and severely injured. So this is one of the things that we're going to talk about in a minute in terms of tackling plastic pollution. I just wanted to show you, this is a real problem all around the world. It's not just that beach in Cornwall that I showed you with the plastic bottles on. It's also beaches on the other side of the world with fishing nets and turtles. Someone said, if you see that, how do you help it? So it very much depends on where you live. You need to basically phone someone who's trained in rescuing turtles, and depending on where you live will depend on who you'd call. If it was in the UK, you'd call the British Divers Marine Life Rescue, and they'd be able to help. I'm sure if you phoned a local vet, they'd be able to find the right person to put you in touch with. But you're right, calling someone is that's a really good, a really good point. If you see this on the beach, you need to call someone. You need to call someone who's in the know. All right, but it's not just the animals in the ocean. Did you want to interject anything, Matthew, about this?
I wasn't gonna interject. I was thinking a lot about coral, and I think you did a great explanation. There was just one question that someone asked about coral having its colour. Does the colour come from these organisms that the coral is containing that make food for it? And I think that is the case, yeah. And when as Cal said, when the coral gets stressed, it basically ejects the chefs. Like, these little creatures that live inside the coral are essentially like chefs making food for the coral using sunlight. But when the coral gets stressed, it ejects them all. But the problem is adult coral actually has a really hard time employing new chefs, because when they're baby corals, they can float about in the ocean and find the best. I keep using the word chefs, but we mean the kind of algae that they use to make food for them. The babies can swim around the ocean and find the best ones, but the adults are in their tower structures, and they can't move around, so they find it really difficult to find new algae to make food for them, and so that's why they bleach and die so rapidly, because they're trying to find, they're not just ejecting them outright, they're trying to find better ones that suit the new ocean environment. But if we keep changing the ocean environment, the coral's going to have to keep trying to find new algae to use, and eventually it can't keep up. Anyway, do carry on, Cal, sorry.
I think that's a fantastic analogy, actually, calling them chefs. That is such a great way of putting it. And when the temperatures change, their taste changes, and they have to find new chefs. I really like that. That's a good one. Right, so we've got, thanks Matthew, that's ace. We've got another video now. This one's really short. We've got a next video, Matthew.
It's coming up.
And what I wanted to say with this one is that it's not just turtles, it's not just manta rays, it's not just dolphins and seals that get affected by plastic. And we'll see a little bit more in this one here.
This beach is disgusting. So much plastic on it. This is breaking my heart. This cow is basically chewing on this piece of fishing net, and I think she swallowed part of it, and she doesn't know what to do, and she's just been stood here for about 20 minutes now just chewing, and if that piece of fishing net goes down into her rumen, she's dead. It's not just the animals out in the ocean here that's affected by this stuff, it's everything.
I wonder, now that's finished, that 100,000 sounds like quite an underestimate.
That's the kind of lowest estimate that's currently being banded around, and it's impossible to ever tell because, you know, we're not able to autopsy every marine mammal that dies, but that's the current the current kind of low end of the estimates, which is terrifying, really, isn't it, if you think about it? And 1 million seabirds. And recent surveys on turtles in the Indian Ocean have revealed plastic in 100%. So that's all the turtles are estimated to have plastic in their stomachs. Can anybody tell me why plastic is bad in a turtle's stomach? Does anybody know why that's an issue? Are they just going to poo it out? Is it just, you know, eat it and then poo it out? Why is plastic in a turtle's stomach an issue?
For those of you who were there on Monday, this was the lesson I gave on Monday. It was about plastic in the air, and we were talking about plastic pollution. So let's see who remembers from Monday's one.
So we've had someone say suffocating. That is a problem if they get a plastic bag over their face. That can certainly be a huge issue. In their stomach, it wouldn't be a problem with suffocating. So remember that animals like turtles, and most mammals, they have what we call an esophagus, which is the food pipe that the food goes down, and they have what we call a trachea, which is a windpipe that the air goes down. So generally, if a turtle ingests plastic, that's going down their food pipe into their stomach. We've got a few people saying various things about this. Okay, so basically the reason plastic is a problem in a turtle stomach is that oftentimes it's too big. It can get in there, but it can't get out. It can't get out the bottom of the stomach. So someone here said, Rach Pringle, it clogs their stomach and makes them think they aren't hungry when they are. Fantastic, that's a really good point. And also sometimes the plastic actually can't then get back out of the stomach once it's in it. So it can fill their stomach full of what they think is food, but is actually in reality plastic, and they can slowly starve from having a stomach full of plastic instead of food. Plastic is also, I'm sure you covered this the other day, Matthew, plastic's also, it's not a completely benign product, you know, it doesn't just have, it's not just plastic and that's it. Oftentimes it's made with lots of chemicals, and so things like carcinogens, which are cancer-causing chemicals, and nasty toxic chemicals can hang on to that plastic in the ocean, and then when it gets into a turtle's stomach, that can then leach out, so it can basically find its way out of the turtle's stomach and into its tissues and cause a lot of harm that way. So yeah, some of you made some really good points here, so well done, that's excellent. Yeah, you've really hit the nail on the head there. Plastic in a turtle's stomach is bad. Plastic around a turtle's wings are bad, flippers are bad. So yes, it's all bad news, or is it? So we've spoke a lot about the bad news, and I don't like to focus on the bad news, because if we just think about the bad news, we're all going to get depressed, no one's going to want to do anything about it, and the world's never going to be a better place. But the reality is that we can all be ocean advocates, we can all advocate for these animals that can't speak up for themselves, and we can all play a part in looking after them. I decided I needed to do something to look after them, and so my way of kind of bringing a bit of ocean optimism and a bit of positivity to this was a few years ago, actually it was 2 years ago now, I decided I was going to stand up paddleboard the whole length of the UK. So do we have a map there, Matthew?
It's in.
Excellent. So we've got people here that live in the UK, we've got people that don't live in the UK. Can anybody guess how many miles and how many months it took me to stand up paddleboard this route that you can see on the screen from Land's End in Cornwall to John O'Groats in the very north of Scotland? Anybody have any idea how many months and how many miles? So we've got 4 months.
And if you want to guess in kilometres, that's fine, and I'll convert it. Or Cal will convert it.
Yeah, I could probably just about.
Or centimetres. Guess in centimetres if you like, but... Yeah.
Extra points if you manage to guess it in centimetres. Okay, someone said 100,000 kilometres. You're giving me a lot of credit there. It wasn't quite 100,000. So, someone said 4 months. Now, I also thought it was going to take me 4 months, and I gave myself 4 months to do this. But in reality, it took 2 months, because we had a really lovely a lovely summer one year in 2018. 43 million inches. I've no idea if it's 43 million inches, but that sounds about right, so you can have a point for that. Someone's, okay, Mariac 2006, you win the prize for the distance with 1,000 miles. So it was 1,000 miles, and it actually took me 2 months to paddle from one end of the UK to the other. And why did I do it? I did it because I wanted to show people that loads of positive stuff is happening to tackle plastic pollution. This is a massive issue, but there are people all over the UK who are standing up and doing their bit to tackle it. And by showing people this, I wanted to inspire more people to be able to do something positive and inspire further change. And this is what I want to do with you guys as well. I want to inspire you to feel like you can do something too. So, can we have a little video, Matthew, please? Excellent, you've converted our miles to kilometres.
I've done
So
it.
this next video you're going to see is about 3 minutes long, and it just shows you what that journey looked like in a very short 3 minutes.
I'm going to bring it up. Before I bring it up, can I just say something that I think is, this is something that someone showed me quite recently, which is, if you measure the coast of the UK, like there's a distance written down somewhere for how long the length of the UK is.
Right.
Have you ever thought about the idea that it depends on how accurately you measure it, and as you increase in accuracy, it just becomes longer and longer and longer as you start like winding around the blades of grass all the way to like winding around the atoms. And I think that's a really good analogy for how sometimes it's better to explain things without all of the detail, because if you add all the detail, then it becomes infinitely long and impossible to understand. Anyway, I just thought it was a nice thought about.
I think that's a really nice analogy. Yeah, because you could actually make the UK coastline. It could become infinite, couldn't it?
Here is the vid. was so cool.
All right. So someone said, when's the full film coming? It is out. It's on Vimeo on demand at the minute. It's a few quid to watch, which is all raising money to set up a charity. So if you fancy watching it, I hope you don't mind me plugging this, Matthew. If you do fancy watching it, if you search Vitamin C on Vimeo on demand, you'll find it there. All right, so what we saw a lot of plastic there, didn't we? In that film, there's a lot of plastic, and there's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and we know that there's lots of plastic in the ocean. But as you saw with the map earlier, I also spent a few weeks going up the canals and rivers inland in the UK. And this is what I found one morning in a canal in Wigan. Does anyone know where Wigan is?
Yeah,
And
loads of the bits that you
yeah.
were showing, I was recognising them when you were doing like the north, like the Cheshire, Manchester. That's my zone.
It's cool, isn't it? So I actually paddled. So I grew up in Warrington, which is was the canal that I paddled through Warrington was the canal that is at the very, very top of my parents' road. So I paddled to my parents' house. I paddled from Cornwall, from where I live, past Devon where I live, all the way to my parents' house in Warrington. It took me about 4 weeks or something to paddle home. Which is ridiculous.
Wow.
But yeah, it's interesting seeing. It was very interesting seeing the whole UK from the water perspective, because my goodness, there's so many beautiful parts of the UK that I don't think we actually realise are right here on our doorsteps to enjoy and discover.
Cal, if I'm like near Wigan now and I have no experience of paddleboarding at all. Oh no, wait,
Right.
I've done it once. How long would it take me to paddleboard to you in Cornwall?
Oh my gosh, I probably wouldn't recommend it. Do some
I'm gonna do
practice.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're in Wigan now and you wanted to paddle to me in Cornwall, the thing is, it's really dependent on the conditions. So when you're on a paddleboard, if there's no wind, you can just go and go and go and go and go. If there's wind, you're really, really affected by it. So anything above sort of 12 miles an hour winds make paddling really, really tricky. So if you've got a good, if you've got a good 6 weeks with no wind, you might be able to make it down to me here in Devon. Or if you had 6 weeks where it was windy every day, you probably wouldn't make it much further than Bristol. So it's all really dependent. And like I was saying earlier, the reason it only took me 2 months to paddle the whole length of the UK 2 years ago was that we had a summer with a period of time where there was very little wind, and so it was really easy just to keep going and keep going and keep going. We should go paddleboarding sometime, Matthew. We should get the boards out on the water and go
That'd be
and pick
great.
up some plastic. So Wigan is in the northwest of the UK, and this was on one of the canals that I paddled through. This is 700 plastic bottles, 700 that I found in 1 hour of paddling. So imagine that I was paddling for sort of 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and this is what I was finding in 1 hour of paddling. Can you just imagine how much plastic there is there in our canals?
How much did you say it was per day? Plastic bottles per day again?
38.5 million that we use in the UK every day.
Yeah.
That's crazy numbers. So these are the bottles that I found in a canal in Wigan. And what I want to know from you is, how did they get there? Can you tell me how they got there? Anybody know?
I feel like this isn't going to be quite what we expect.
Say again?
I feel like this isn't going to be quite what we expect.
Well, I think some of it might be what we expect. What do you think, Matthew? How do you think they got there?
I don't know. Well, I thought you were about to reveal that it would be slightly different, because I imagine that there's a lot of people who just don't care and just throw plastic bottles around.
Yeah.
But I was also thinking how maybe it's that one of the things I really worry about is that we entrust our rubbish and we entrust our recycling to recycling centres that then don't treat it responsibly.
Yeah.
And I know that's more of a problem in other countries than it is in the UK, but Yeah.
So you're right. So oftentimes with recycling, we send a piece of plastic to a recycling plant and we think we've done our job, that's gone, it's fine, it's being recycled, no problem. And a lot of the plastic that we send to recycling cannot be recycled, or it's not economically viable for it to be recycled. But generally, that stuff would then go to landfill. Now, you're quite right. A lot of the plastic that ends up in the canals is from people who just dump it there while they're walking past. Excuse me. But a lot of it's coming from other areas. And basically, if you can imagine the canals and rivers that run through our country, that's going to be the kind of lowest point for a piece of plastic to get to. So if a piece of plastic blows out of a bin, or it gets, so someone's here said getting blown out of bins, absolutely. It gets blown off the top of a landfill site, blown out of somebody's bin as the bin's being collected by the curbside collections. Anything that then ends up on the tarmac or in the environment, over a period of time, over rain, wind, it's all going to get washed to the lowest point, to the point of least resistance, which is oftentimes the canals. And canals run through urban areas, right? They run through the places where most people live. And so that's where most litter's being used. And with the best will in the world, even if we put all our litter into a bin, or even if we recycle everything we can, there is still going to be a proportion of that doesn't make it to landfill. And, you know, landfill's a great big issue in itself, all by itself. But that ends up in the canals, that can then potentially end up in the ocean. And similarly with rivers, canals and rivers go somewhere. Some of the canals in the UK don't, some of them are closed systems, but a lot of the canals end up at sea locks, which go out to sea. So I want to know what your experience of this is. Do you live near a river or canal? Do you see this? What do you think about this plastic that we're finding inland? And does this change the way that you think that you're connected to the ocean? Because I know most of you before said that you did feel a connection to the ocean, but 25% said maybe. Those who said maybe, do you now think that maybe your connection to the ocean is more apparent than you first thought, knowing that the plastic you use, even if you live miles away, can find its way into the sea? What do you think, people?
It looks like the number of yeses increased on the poll. There's now more people saying they feel connected to the ocean.
Is the poll still going? That's interesting. Yeah. So we've got someone saying they live near a river. What do you see in that river? Do you see plastic in the river that's going out to sea? All right. So the next question is what can we do about it? So what can we do about this? You know, what can we do about plastic that's finding its way into our rivers and our streams? Someone said in Bahrain, the plastic pollution is a very serious problem. Being an island, you'd assume people would appreciate it. You're quite right, you know, but perhaps there people aren't really appreciating just how important the ocean is for our health and how important our actions are in protecting the oceans from plastic. So someone said use less plastic. Fantastic idea. And while we're on that subject of using less plastic, the kind of plastic we're talking about here, so, you know, not all plastic is bad. Plastic has some amazing uses. You know, our medicines are often delivered in plastic, but it's single-use plastic that's most likely finding its way into the environment. So about half the plastic we make is single-use plastic. Does anybody know what single-use plastic is? And can you give me some ideas of what single-use plastic is? Anybody know what single-use plastic is? So I'll give you a clue. In that picture where I'm sat there, all that stuff around me is single-use plastic. It's stuff that's used for minutes. It's often food packaging, and then it's thrown away. And so the volume of plastic that we're producing, someone said shopping bags, straws, packaging, food packaging, plastic bottles, exactly, you guys are spot on. All that stuff that we're using for a matter of minutes then is discarded and has the potential to find its way into our waterways and into our oceans. So what can we do about it? Yes, we can use less plastic. I think also it's really important to appreciate how connected all these issues are. So we've got plastic pollution, we've got climate change. Does anybody know what plastic is made from? Anybody know what materials plastic is made from? So I'll give you a clue. This is what one of the main things that relates it to climate change. Someone said polymers, quite right. What comes before the polymer? What's the raw material for a lot of plastic?
Corn, sweet corn.
Crude oil.
Crude oil
So
is a much better answer than sweet corn.
Sweet corn. So we can have cornstarch plastics, definitely, but petroleum, crude oil, hydrocarbons, exactly. And we know now that if we want to tackle climate change, we need to leave crude oil, petroleum, hydrocarbons in the ground. We need to not be liberating them from the ground. They need to stay there. And we need to be limiting our use of that. So if we're producing all this plastic, we're also affecting the climate change crisis as well, and we're destroying habitats for the marine environment, which we've spoken about how important that is. So what can we do about it? Who feels that them using reusable shopping bags is going to change the world? What do you think? Do you think you taking your reusable shopping bags is going to change the world? Fantastic. So someone said, to be honest, I only see pollution where I live more than a small bottle or two. I swim almost every day. I think that's good compared to when I went to Florida. Yes, so obviously different parts of the world are going to accumulate plastic differently. So one thing I noticed on my expedition is that the west coast of Scotland, that's particularly affected by plastic. The beaches there have loads of plastic on, and that's because the prevailing winds, so the most common wind direction, is from out to sea onto the land there, and the tides and currents there bring them up onto the beach. So each beach is going to be affected differently depending on the currents and the type of wind going on there. So we've got some answers to, do you think taking your shopping bags is going to save the world? Yes, a little bit. It's definitely a start. No, will help a bit. My bag for life is a game changer. Anything helps. I do take a bag for shopping. Yes, if enough people do it, exactly. So the answer is, it's not going to save the world by itself, but it is going to save the world as a community of people who are all doing things to help use less plastic. And what I mean by that is, it's not just down to you, okay? So this problem isn't just down to you, but as soon as you believe that your actions have no impact, and if everybody believes that their actions have no impact, we're really stuck. So we have to believe that the things that we do to reduce our plastic consumption is going to inspire other people to do it, and then we're going to have loads and loads of people all making choices, all making the right choice to reuse your reusable bags, your refillable water bottle, to refuse single-use plastic where you can. And we've got a few people here saying food producers and manufacturers need to change too. Yes, exactly. It's not just down to us, but unless we make these changes, unless we start using our voice as active citizens, both in terms of telling the companies that we want things to be done differently, supporting companies that are doing the right thing, and also asking the government and our MPs to do the right thing. Once we all start to do that, then that voice which is demanding change around plastic is so much stronger. So I'm really enjoying these comments here. It's not going to change the world, but it will make a small difference. Did any of you see Jane Goodall speak yesterday? Jane Goodall is the author of one of my absolute most favourite quotes in the whole world, which is that she likes to envisage the whole world as a jigsaw puzzle. And if everybody does their own part in the jigsaw puzzle and has faith that everybody else in the world is playing their part, then together we're going to create a massive wave of change around the globe. So yes, we all have our part to play. The companies all have their part to play. The governments have their part to play, and we're all in this together. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about some other ocean issues, but I think we're running out of time. So I think Matthew, should I finish up with my final comments here?
I think let's wrap up. Let's see if anyone has any last questions, but we should stop rather than going too far over the hour. Miz is saying yes, loved it. Yes, I've got a couple more pictures of yours to show as well, actually.
Yes, so the final picture we've got is just to show you that we are all connected to the oceans. We're connected to the oceans physically with the oxygen we breathe, And the more emotionally connected we are to the oceans, the more emotionally invested we are in the oceans, the more likely we're going to want to protect them, and the more able we're going to be to protect the animals that live there. So if you're one of these people that said maybe, that's fine. It's completely understandable that you feel that you're only maybe connected to the oceans if you're not able to spend much time there, if you don't have a real strong emotional connection with it. But maybe this is a really good opportunity to go and spend some time by the rivers, by the canals, by the oceans, and just appreciating how it feels to be in that place, how it feels to physically be by the water, by the oceans, and then ask yourself, how far would you be willing to go to protect that? And is it worth getting yourself a refillable bottle, knowing that by doing that, by refilling your water bottle and not buying plastic bottles, that you're doing a small bit to protect this place that we love?
I really like some of the comments coming in from some of the people, like Kate saying that if we stop buying it, they'll stop making it. Steph saying that she loves her metal water bottles and straws, and Mariak is saying that some fast food places will give you a food in your own container if you ask for it. Yeah,
exactly. And all of these things, they can seem like such tiny drops in the ocean of this massive, enormous, overwhelming challenge. But actually starting to take action, that is going to be what stops you getting overwhelmed by it. Taking action, feeling really proud of it. And rather than feeling guilty about what you can't do, feeling super proud about what you can do. And that's only going to be a good thing. It'll inspire other people. And together, between us, we can start to create the systemic change, which means change throughout all of our society, the way we do things, not just the individual change. We can start to create this systemic change, which is what we need to actually alleviate the pressure that's being put on our oceans by our actions. So, we're not just here to affect the ocean's health in a negative way. We can all make choices to affect the ocean's health in a positive way. And I'd like you to think about that over the next few days. What can you do? What can you do at home? What can you ask your folks to do, your parents, your friends, your family? What can you do? Not what can you be scared about or upset about, but what can you do to protect the turtles and the manta rays in this beautiful place that we call our home, that we are all a part of, and that is a part of all of us. And I'd like to thank you in advance for everything that I know you can do, because I know you're all going to be ocean advocates in your own right now. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cal, so much for coming on. It's been absolutely amazing to hear you speak, and such a privilege to have you on the school. There are really positive comments pouring in from everyone. I think what we'll do now is I'm just gonna say a thank you and a goodbye, and then we'll go to questions. So if you've got extra questions for Cal, we'll stay on for a few more minutes, and you can ask them. I can see that there are some already coming in. But for those who have to head off, I just wanted to quickly show you, this is what is coming up next week on the school. If this was your first time watching, then thanks so much for coming. Do sign up to get the schedule on our website, and please also follow our social media, which is all at Aim High Live. And this is what is coming up next week. On Monday, I'm going to do what's the most futuristic farm. So I'm going to do about the future of farming. So this is Aim High Live, to follow the socials. What can we learn from plagues of locusts? Dr. Hannah from Oxford is going to do how can bubbles treat cancer. Nish is going to do how can you trust your moral beliefs, and Phil is back next week from sonnets to battle rap, a short history of violent verse. So do come along to those, and do sign up and do tell your friends about this, because we are going to continue to run this throughout the lockdown and beyond. So yeah, thanks all for coming, and I can see loads of people saying we love you, Cal. And thank you so much for coming on. Right.
Well, thank you all. You're fantastic, and it's been great to actually chat to you guys, rather than just feel like I'm disseminating knowledge. This is a conversation, and it's a conversation that we all need to be part of. So thank you all so much. This is wonderful.
Thank you, Cal. Right, let's go to questions. So I saw a few come in. Where was the one that I saw? How was it? Have you got any tips for starting out in an activism career? That's from Anna Evans.
I think that's a really, really good question, because what I've been saying to you today is that we can all be ocean advocates and we can all be activists. And I think as citizens of your country, you are in a unique privileged position to be an active citizen, and we have to utilise our voices as citizens. And that means writing to your MP. I don't know how it works in everybody's country. You know, I think we've got people from a lot of countries here, but in the UK certainly, we're voters, we are constituents, we can talk to our MPs, and I think that's a really important way to make our voice heard. Being active consumers as well, so actively supporting the brands that are doing the right thing for the oceans. In terms of starting out in a career in activism, I would say that connection to the natural world is by far the most important thing to nurture. So really getting deep into the understanding of where your why comes from. Why do you care about this? What is it that makes you care about it? And I really think it's important to find your tribe. So I started my activism with Surfers Against Sewage. I'm a regional rep for Surfers Against Sewage. I spent a lot of time running beach cleans with them. And before I joined them, I felt very alone, very overwhelmed by the problem of plastic. I didn't know what to do about it. And then I started volunteering with Surfers Against Sewage and found this group of amazing, like-minded, passionate people. And we all supported each other, and just having other people there, especially in the early days of plastic campaigning, when there wasn't so much in the media, having other people there around me to support me and other people that I could support as well was really vital. So whatever it is that you feel particularly passionate about, I can guarantee there's a charity there or a community group that can help you get started. Find your tribe. If you can find your local tribe, so that means a community group near you, then even better. And I know the Surfers Against Sewage Plastic Free Coastlines groups are amazing. They're all over the UK. The Extinction Rebellion local groups. Find those people who can help you channel your passion into something productive.
I'm seeing there's a lot of people saying share the Greenpeace petitions. There are a lot of organisations with very good petitions. Particularly the one that I really like is called Some of Us, with some spelled SUM, as in a combination of us. They do some brilliant ones. And Surfers Against Sewage, Cal's talking about good tribes. They are a really, really good group of people. So if there's a group of them around where you live, I would seriously recommend getting in touch with them. I think we maybe got time for one more question, and there's just this quite fun one, which is from Emma, saying, have you ever on one of your tours fallen off your paddleboard, or have you had an immaculate perfect career?
I didn't fall off my paddleboard when I paddled the length of the UK. What? I did fall off it a couple of times when I was paddling around the Isle of Skye in Scotland. And I fell off it once when I was paddling around Cornwall because I got scared by a seal. So occasionally I've fallen off, but fortunately nothing's been too dramatic.
Can't believe you didn't fall off your entire journey of the UK. That's unreal.
So I got to about 20 miles from the end, and I was going through this really nasty tidal wave, so really fast-moving body of water. It was really lumpy, big waves, big standing waves, and I was literally, in fact, I wasn't even 20 miles from the end. It was about 5 miles from the end, and I hadn't fallen off so far. And I was like, I can't even go through this standing up, because if I fall off now, that's going to have ruined the whole clean streak so far. So I knelt on my board and just hung on for dear life, hoping that I wouldn't fall off in the last 5 miles. But I didn't set out on the journey to not fall off the paddleboard. But I was paddling in. Oftentimes I wasn't wearing a wetsuit on the top half, because it makes it very uncomfortable to paddle in. So falling off would have been incredibly unpleasant. So I did everything I possibly could to make sure I didn't.
Thank you so much. That turns out it was from Isla, that question. Okay, we will wrap up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And Aim High will be back next Monday. Do check out the calendar via this website to see what's coming up. And do tell your friends, and we shall see you all again. Thank you so much, Cal. It's been amazing to have you on.
Oh, it's been so lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you again, everybody, for getting involved, and for doing everything you can to protect our beautiful, glorious planet that protects us. So thank you.